Welcome to Interacting with the Blind.
This training module is for first responders and others.
Anyone who may encounter people who are blind or visually impaired
in the course of performing their jobs.
This training is designed to equip you in the following areas: define blindness and visual impairment, understand societal demographics of blindness and visual impairment, discuss stereotypes, myths, and misperceptions related to blindness. Understand the importance of repeated introduction and verbal communication when interacting with an individual who is blind or visually impaired. Understanding the importance of allowing the individual to maintain control of visual aid devices such as white cane, guide dog, etc. Understand sighted guide techniques for assisting an individual who is blind or visually impaired. Recognize the importance of verbally explaining action before physically contacting the individual.
Let's start with the basics. What does the term blind mean? Despite what many people believe, the term blind does not always mean a complete lack of sight. Blindness is a spectrum disability in which the term blind can mean anything from impaired vision to total loss of sight. Visual impairment usually refers to low vision, but is also used instead of the term blind, as some individuals find the term blind to be associated with negative stereotypes.
Societal demographics of blindness. The disabled population makes up approximately 13% of society in general. The blind population accounts for approximately 1% of that disabled population. The blind community is quite literally a slice of society in general. People in this community range the full spectrum of society, from couch potatoes to doctors and lawyers and everything in between. Unfortunately, for those of you in law enforcement, some of these people don't make the best choices and take a part in their fair share of criminal activities. Later, we'll discuss interactive techniques to help you thoughtfully and respectfully offer assistance to people who are blind during community service interactions, investigative interactions, or emergencies.
Stereotypes, myths, and misperceptions. There are many stereotypes, myths, and misperceptions surrounding blindness and visual impairment. Many of these tend to be negative and stem from a lack of knowledge, inaccurate media portrayals, or other bad influences. What are some of the myths about blindness that you've heard of? Some common answers include people who are blind are helpless. People living with blindness or visual impairments often lead very full lives. Through adaptive learning skills, these people lead independent lives in which they travel, work, and enjoy hobbies, raise families, and have all the same hopes and dreams of anyone else. People who are blind often wear sunglasses. This myth is not typically true. While there are individuals who prefer to wear sunglasses due to light sensitivity, most people who are blind do not wear sunglasses. And sunglasses should not be considered a means of determining that a person is blind. People who are blind have a better sense of hearing and touch. This myth is not true. People who are blind do not gain added sensory superpowers. People who live with blindness or visual impairment often rely much more on these senses, so they may become more aware of information gained through these senses. People who are blind are better at playing musical instruments. While there are some great blind musicians out there, it's not because they're blind. They're simply great musicians who happen to be blind.
Communication and interaction. Communication is important no matter who you're interacting with. When interacting with an individual who is blind or visually impaired, verbal communication is essential. While you may be thinking that this is a no-brainer, verbal communication is more complicated than you think. Often, when interacting with others, verbal communication is only a part of the message which is being conveyed. As humans, we rely on other cues which accompany the spoken word to understand what is being communicated. These other cues may include things like body posture, facial expressions, physical gestures, and distance between participants of the interaction. These nonverbal cues rely solely on sight to be perceived. When an individual is blind or visually impaired, they don't have that same access to visual information. This lack of information can lead to miscommunication, misunderstanding, and potentially hazardous outcomes in an emergency situation. For example, in a fire or a medical emergency, this lack of information could lead to confusion or fear in the individual you are interacting with. In a law enforcement situation, this lack of information could also result in the same effect. It could potentially cause law enforcement professionals to misinterpret actions as aggressive or non-compliant when the individual is simply reacting to a situation in which they are confused or scared.
So how should you approach a person who's blind or visually impaired? The first encounter or introduction. When first interacting with someone who's blind or low vision, understand that they're not going to pick up on visual cues, such as your uniform, or that you're even there until you verbally address them. Tell the individual who you are, what you are, and why you are there. Ask the individual how you can assist them. Don't assume that they need assistance. If you need to step away from the individual, let them know that you are leaving. Upon returning, reintroduce yourself to them. It might take a bit longer to recognize someone by voice than by sight. Also, in an emergency situation, it may take the individual longer to recognize people by voice due to the added stress of the situation.
Interaction and assistance. Before physically contacting the blind individual, ask them if it is okay to touch them, or tell them that you are doing so before touching them on the hand. If the situation permits, tell the individual what you are going to do before doing it. When giving verbal directions, be very clear. When explaining where something is, use words like 30 feet ahead and to the right. Avoid using terms like there or that way. An individual who is blind or visually impaired may not understand what you mean. Remember, pointing is not helpful to a blind person. If the individual uses an assistance tool like a white cane or a guide dog, it is critical not to separate the individual from their assistance tool. Doing so will effectively leave them stranded. These tools help the individual understand their environment in addition to navigating through it. In an emergency situation, it is critical to make sure that they have this assistance tool with them. When assisting a person who is blind or visually impaired, it is important not to grab the white cane or guide dog harness to lead them. The individual relies on this tool to gain information about their environment. If you are pulling it, they are not getting the information they need. Think of these tools as their eyes. On a special note, when assisting an individual with a guide dog, give verbal instructions to the handler and not to the dog. The dog is trained to listen to commands from the handler, not you. In the event that you need to lead the guide dog for the handler, always use the leash and never the harness handle. This tells the dog that he is not working and it will relax and follow alongside you in the heel position. In the event that the handler must be transported due to medical or law enforcement reasons, the guide dog must be transported with the handler. As a service animal, this is a right protected under federal and state accessibility laws.
When offering sighted guide assistance, offer your arm to the individual to grab. Your body will provide feedback to them, and they'll simply follow along about a step behind you. When passing through a doorway or other tight area, move your arm behind your body, and this will cue the individual who is blind to follow behind you. When coming upon stairs, let the individual know that they are there, and whether you will be going up or down the stairs. Let them know if there's a handrail they can hold. When passing through a doorway, mention whether the door swings towards or away from them. Also let them know if the door swings from the right or the left side.
Special points and concerns. When offering sighted assistance, law enforcement professionals need to be very mindful of the risk that the individual who's blind may accidentally graze your weapon while reaching for your arm. To prevent any hazards from this potential, simply guide the individual's hand to your elbow. To maintain care and control of your weapon, simply place your hand over your weapon. This keeps control of the weapon by the law enforcement professional while still offering an elbow to guide the individual. Another option is to offer the arm opposite your weapon side to further reduce this risk. In situations in which a blind person is placed under arrest and handcuffed, law enforcement professionals need to be very conscious and intentional in their verbal communication. With their hands behind them, an individual who is blind has no way to understand their environment or use their assistance tools.
Service animals. Under the ADA, a service animal is any dog that is trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of a person with a disability. It's okay to ask the service dog handler if the animal is required because of a disability or what work or task the animal has been trained to provide for you. It's not okay to ask the service dog handler what their disability is.
In conclusion, please keep in mind that communication is key.
Remember, blind or visually impaired people are people. We just don't see as well as you do.
Keep it friendly and natural.
Keep in mind that some of the cues you use to communicate are visual cues, and we have a hard time picking up on that.
So please speak to us, keep us informed, tell us what we need to know.
Your respect and consideration are very much appreciated.